Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. Hi, my name is Bonnie Violet. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a trans, femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm a 6-year doctoral student in clinical psych. I am tired as hell today, and I care about you.
Right on. And I'm Lulu, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol. I'm a former Miss CCC, if that means anything to you. And then I'm always in search of balance. And welcome.
And I am Billy Lemon. I am the executive director of the Castro Country Club. I just got back from AIDS Life Cycle and my butt hurts.
Your butt.
All right. And each week we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversation around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for people in recovery.
But before we do, I always do that. Sorry, Bonnie.
You're fine. By tackling topics used to separate us.
Now, but before we do that, like, subscribe, comment, ding that bell.
Ding that bell. Is Brandon the bell because you're always playing?
Ding that bell. No, because the bell's right here, and you're like, ding it. Ding that bell.
Billy's butt's hurting and ding Brandon's bell. Hey, okay. What's that?
I don't know.
You're not coming through very.
Am I coming through?
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Much better.
It was a little. Yeah. It was a little low. I was trying to.
A little low.
Is this going to be another ASMR video?
No, I was doing like.
Oh God.
How's everyone doing?
Well, I'm good. You know what? Honestly, it's like I had a really interesting night last night.
Yeah.
Someone that I've been kind of communicating with came over.
Yeah.
And and it was really cool. And I haven't been interested in inviting anybody over into my space, but it was kind of what I've been looking for, the connection, but also the kind of talking and cuddling. Because I'm not trying to invite you over just for a quick something where there's, it's in line with my sexual idea.
Oh.
Right.
So it's really cool. And, we'll see.
Mazel.
Well, yeah.
Good for you. Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel sympathetic joy for you. That's cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Billy?
As I just stated, my butt hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on a bike for 7 days, 8 hours, 9 hours a day. And until you have put your butt through that, your butt is unfamiliar with it. So it is a whole new world.
A whole new world.
It's a whole new world downtown.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, it's good to see you here.
Yeah.
I really like your shirt.
It's very nice to be here.
Before I talk about myself, I think it's really cute that Billy has a book with him that I think he's going to be referring throughout today's discussion, which is makes me feel like I'm on Oprah, actually, to be honest.
Actually, Billy just likes to be prepared.
Billy likes to carry books. So how am I doing? I'm pretty good. As many of you know, I've been busy writing. I have to propose. I have a dissertation proposal that's due at the end of this month. So I've been reading and writing a lot, which has been a little crazy making. So I've been very grateful to be around friends and to hear from family and to get out of the house. And just happy to be at this point where my complaint is that I'm working towards something that's pretty great.
That's a good complaint.
Yeah, it's a good complaint.
How's Bonnie?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. How's Bonnie? Bonnie's good. She's good. I'm over in Oakland where it's like 70 something, but it feels like 100 and something.
Yeah, it's pretty hot out there.
Yeah. Just over here, doing the stuff. I'm actually making wigs for this weekend for my drag children. Yes.
Can we see any of them right now? Can you give us a preview? No?
Not very easily.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. You want to see the finished product. It's because unless you can trust the process, it's probably a good idea that you don't see it.
Well, I have the mohawk done, but I just have 2 more sets to make.
Oh, everybody likes a mohawk moment.
A mohawk moment. I love when people say moment. Have you ever seen that Mariah Carey YouTube?
Oh yeah.
Where it's all the moments.
All the
moments. Oh, I love that so much. Speaking of moments, today we're going to be talking about vulnerable moments. Do you like that segue?
I like
that. Was pretty good.
Super solid.
I'm so smooth.
He's always trying with the smooth segues.
The smooth segues because
we usually keep talking and don't let it.
Yeah. Because you're rude. So today we're going to be talking. So-
I'm an alcoholic and self-centered, so I think
Yeah.
that's a little different.
Don't forget egotistical.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about vulnerability. If y'all have logged in before, you know we mentioned Brene Brown a lot, and we talk about all the different things that we have like individually picked up from some of her work. And so part of today's discussion is not, of course, on Brene Brown exclusively. There are many other thinkers out there that have talked about the power of vulnerability and what it means to be a sensitive human being, for example. And of course, our lived experiences in 12-step and building relationships with other people. So where should we begin?
Lulu brought notes. Lulu's got notes, right?
They all got notes.
Let's let Billy start, because the reason why I was exposed to Brene Brown is because I kept hearing Billy talk about.
This is true.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So Billy is 8 years sober, and Billy got connected. I'm talking about myself
In the
third
third
person.
person. I don't think that's ever happened on the show before.
Super weird.
It's a little cringe.
I got exposed to Brene Brown the first, I think it was the first year I got sober, in 2013. Somebody sent me to YouTube to watch her Houston TED Talk.
Yeah.
And I was both mystified and had like this instant fanboy reaction, and must have watched it 100 times, and then started showing it to everybody that I knew. And I guess shortly thereafter, I got Daring Greatly, and then I got The Gifts of Imperfection, and I had this little circle of friends who all got sober with me. Shout out to Maggie, who also saw the power in the story that Brene was telling, right? And so I read everything, and to be clear, I tried to offer my copy of Daring Greatly to several people, but I like to read with a Sharpie and highlighters. Any of my sponsees know I have them do their step work in 2 colors, just to see if they're willing. You know, it works. And my copy of Daring Greatly is highlighted to death.
Same.
Same. It is ridiculous. We should just send them to Brene.
No, exactly. It's like I actually did Daring Greatly with my sponsor, where we went.
Such a good book to do as step work.
So for people not familiar with Daring Greatly, can y'all maybe not summarize, but tell us what are maybe some of the things that most resonated with you?
So I think as queer, I mean, I'll speak from my own experience. I think as queer folks, all of us have one of the most profound moments of vulnerability that is part of the human existence, and that's coming out. And so from that springboard, we are trying to connect to everything that Brene kind of speaks about, right? Living in our authentic selves, connecting to folks that both share our shared values, and connect to a community that can support us. And then that also transcends to recovery in a very meaningful and easy way, right? And so everything, it helps that, it was not a surprise to me. I'll put it this way. It was not a surprise to me to find out that Brene was also sober. And I didn't find that out until later. I think after I read The Gifts of Imperfection, as I was battling weight gain in years 2 and 3 of my sobriety, that I realized that I found out she was also sober. And I was like, oh my gosh, she is she was, for a minute, she was the higher power that I kind of I went to. What it basically comes down, I'm going to read something real quick, actually.
Okay.
So there's a really great quote in Daring Greatly, and she uses it, and it's where the title comes from. And it basically, it's a quote from Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And it says this, it says, dare greatly. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong the man stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end of the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat, right? And that really, really spoke to me when I read it. It speaks to me every time I hear her kind of, relate to it. It means basically that you have to be willing to fail.
Yeah.
Right. Evie said it on RuPaul's Drag Race the other night when she was, doing this little dragulation speech. You have to be willing to fail in order to succeed, and that's what it all comes back to. And it centers itself around being personally vulnerable.
Exactly. I think that this idea of vulnerability or the power in it is like, and what you were saying, when we come here, it's like I had this mask, or I was presenting a certain way. I was trying to show people what I thought they wanted to see. And now I understand that sometimes people don't really care. I mean, it comes down to me. So I think the beauty of doing the work that we do in recovery is like pulling that veil off, showing who I am at my rawest, and trusting that people are going to accept me, or going to love me, and take me as I am, or should I say, early on, I guess it requires courage and a risk, but the more that we do it, it's easier to do it, and it's like, because I don't have that kind of fear anymore, but it was a process. I had to get to a place where, and mainly because I was in so much pain. Like I was in pain. I needed to do something different. And so when I came into the rooms, and I connected with other people in recovery, and they told me this is what you need to do, I listened. Like I wish I had found Brene a lot sooner, because when you have language for what it is that you're trying to do, it helps you to kind of connect to it in a more effective way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just I wanted to go back to this idea of authenticity and then also doing the work, right? So, for people listening in, I'm sure you have your own interpretation of what that means, right? But given what we're talking about with vulnerability and how much you feel impacted by the idea, can you both say a little bit more about what does it mean to be authentic, and what are you referring to when you say the work?
Is that question for me?
That's open. Yeah, it's open.
Bonnie, you want to chime in?
Yeah.
No, go for it. I wasn't listening to the question for me. I was thinking you two were answering it.
I got it. So let me hop in. So as I mentioned, I just got back from doing AIDS Life Cycle. It's 7-day ride. It's from San Francisco to LA, for anybody who doesn't know. It's to help raise money and erase stigma around HIV. It was 2,700 of us, and we ride about 85 miles a day for 7 days. And where does authenticity come into it? There were a lot of times when I was training to try and do this, because I lost a bunch of weight last year, and I didn't really think this was something that I was going to be able to do. But I really wanted to do it. And there were moments on the ride where I really, really wanted to quit. It was just super, super hard. It was super hard. And And I got to sit in those emotions because a lot of the ride was very meditative, because you're kind of just by yourself with your thoughts on the bike for long stretches. And
That's a plug for doing the
It's life cycle.
it's super rad. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, and the most rewarding thing I've ever done, full stop. But I had to own up. There was no one else to really help me. I had to own all that I was in that moment, and be okay with it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was, that was kind of a very authentic moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's like, because I feel like I'm still learning who Lewis is. I mean, I have a better idea now, but I think where I'm at my most authentic is when I put myself out there. Very simply, I put myself out there to do something. I find out I don't like it, and I don't have any problem telling people I don't like it. It's like, I've been talking a lot lately about really liking going home and doing nothing and not feeling any pressure, not feeling any unnecessary FOMO for not doing what other people are doing, not getting caught up. I think also just living in my truth.
Mm-hmm.
This recovery has taught me how to kind of honor my emotions, what I feel. And I feel like early on, it used to blow me away when I was able to talk to someone else outside of me about feelings of envy, about jealousy or whatever. That's real. And that's scary to talk, without thinking that someone might judge you for feeling a certain way. But I think that when I'm connecting with my true emotions, the way that I feel, and unapologetically, and I was also thinking about I used to see this thing, I got it from somebody else, nothing that I have is original. But there was a time where I was so concerned about what other people thought. And so that would affect what I did next. And then I found a little bit of a voice, and so I got defiant. I'm like, I don't care. But the reality was I did care underneath that. And now where I am is I acknowledge that I do care because I want to be a thoughtful person, but I cannot let that affect how I do what I need to do. So I think for me, I think I'm in my most authentic self because I want to be a good person. I want to love you. I want to be generous and all those good things, but I also have to take care of Lewis.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is also beautiful. I'm curious, Bonnie Violet, with the work that you've done with like identity dualship, how you think about authenticity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think authenticity really is just about getting closer to the truth, and being willing to express that. And authenticity is an understanding of yourself, but it's also how other people see you or how you show up for other people. And I know it's really easy for like the authentic self to look like the good parts. Um, but I think true authenticity is like those difficult things, those difficult emotions, a lot like Lulu was talking about, like envy or jealousy or fear or that sort of thing. And I think and vulnerability, I think, is a big tool in being able to live authentically. And vulnerability begets more vulnerability. Like I learned how to be vulnerable because people around me were vulnerable. And I think we can connect at the points of vulnerability, even if we're not vulnerable about the same thing, if that makes sense. I mean, you can see vulnerability. And for someone to actually reveal um, their weakness to you, or that soft spot, that dangerous spot, I mean, there's something really precious and really sacred and really special about that. And I think it challenges you to also kind of open up a little bit too.
Yeah, it's so disarming. I think whenever I've been in the company of someone who's vulnerable in this unapologetic way, in a way that so clearly touches them, I've always been super disarmed by it. I feel compelled to note that this feels like such a rich and warm conversation. Like I'm like feeling something in my chest. My only, maybe not my only connection with the idea of authenticity, or with respect to my own experience has been that what I understand of authenticity has to do with where behaviors and thoughts originate, right? So I've spent so much time adapting to the world when I was drinking and using, and even to some degree as like a sober person, where I'm so afraid of whether or not the world is going to accept me that I'm just adjusting the entire time. And so what I've understood about authenticity has been having to calm down and slow down to understand, like, what am I actually thinking here? What am I actually feeling here? And to repeat what Bonnie Violet was saying, vulnerability has become this excellent highway to access those kind of things, right? And there's something too, I'm drawing this parallel between the 12 steps and vulnerability. My sponsor told me many years ago, he said, you know, the 12 steps are there to clear the path between you and God. That's it. And that's why we all get these gifts, but all of our gifts are unique, right? Because the path is just cleared, and then that's the relationship. And I feel like there's something very similar to be said about vulnerability, that when we open up, you know, the impact becomes very unique and rich to our own experience. What's going on over there, Billy?
Yeah, I'm just it all the threads are so interwoven between the steps and clearing the deck of maybe of trauma and our familial relationships, our friendships. I know that I have a partner, and this pops up all the time. I have this conversation with myself all the time, because I think about this story that Brene tells about her and her husband swimming across a lake, and her having this internal fight with herself because her husband doesn't wait for her at the other side of the lake. And so by the time she gets back, she's so upset with him, and they're in two completely different places, but it just speaks to the dynamic of how you have to be very authentic with who you are as an individual in your relationships with other folks. Mm-hmm. So there were times over this past week where Michael and I did this ride together, and I knew it was going to be challenging for us. And I joked about it before we left, to kind of like, because I wanted us to have the space to navigate uncomfortable conversations on the ride as they arose. And there were times where I was riding behind him, and I was just so proud of all the work he had done to get to that spot. And then there were times where I was just like so overwhelmed with like euphoric recall and like emotional. I was just exhausted, that I had to like have uncomfortable conversations with him about how I wanted my day to go. Right. That maybe it wasn't best if we were in each other's company all day because I was feeling some sort of way. That's what it means. That's the stuff I get from being vulnerable. It's the power to have uncomfortable conversations, especially when it pops around, when it centers around something about myself that I don't particularly care for, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm exposing some sort of yucky part of either my personality or how I'm feeling in any particular moment, if I can express that in a way that's authentic and real, then that's being vulnerable. And what it does is I think it does is it establishes trust, right? Yeah. And this happens for Michael and I I just outed him. This happens for Michael and I all the time.
Everybody's Michael.
This happens for Michael. This happens for Michael and I all the time. Like trust in our partnership is developed over time, right? It's developed in small little moments where each of us is vulnerable and able to communicate in a way that's both like kind and loving. And sometimes communicating in a kind and loving way is like telling the other person or your friend that like you're being an asshole.
Yeah,
right?
I can't.
Or you're just acting really. You're just you're not able to get there in the moment, right? And I think Brene also, like, that's part of the narrative that she weaves through all of her literature, is kind of like the willingness to admit that you're being a shithead.
Yeah.
Right? And communicate that in a way that's honest.
Yeah. There was a comment that just came in.
Oh, hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
It says, it says, Joshua wrote, it's when I fail and all my true colors show. I feel authentically human because Josh is a story about who I think I am, the I. My actions, words, and attitudes transcend that story of Josh, and I have inescapable human moment.
Look at Joshua.
Josh,
Look at Joshua speaking about himself in the third person.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, is this a theme?
Feels like a theme.
I did a little research, and
Let's see.
there was this quote from actually Walter Anderson said, "We're never so vulnerable than when we trust someone, but paradoxically, if we cannot trust, neither can we find love or joy." And then, it's interesting. It's like, it's like almost like the chicken or the egg type deal.
Yeah.
Like these are things that we have to do. Like, but something like I don't know if I can give this to you and then you can put it in the parking lot that we should talk about before. So Simon Sinek says there is a difference between vulnerability and telling people everything about yourself. Vulnerability is a feeling. Telling everyone about yourself is just facts and details. And what's unfortunate sometimes is that you have people who, and we get this a lot from folks in recovery who use that as a way of sort of manipulation because that's what they know. I mean, it's like sometimes it's just it's the behavior that you had to get through, and it's important to know the difference between that because I can tell you everything and tell you nothing all at the same time.
Right.
It requires a lot to kind of get to a place where you trust and yeah.
Do you have something that you wanted to read?
Yeah. So
I love that.
Trust. So this is from Dare to Lead. This is kind of a tangential book from Brene on.
Let's hear it.
On how you can lead in a way that's daring. It says trust is the stacking and layering of small moments and reciprocal vulnerability over time. Trust and vulnerability grow together, and to betray one is to destroy both.
You know, were you going to say something, Lewis?
No, I was like in church. I'm like, amen.
It's that paradox. It's the paradox that you were just discussing. Right?
Anka writes, I am still in awe when I see, feel, hear people get really, really real with themselves because it sets an example for me and makes it less scary for me and provides me with an example of how I want to be. I feel like you all do it every time you come on here. When I see someone standing in their truth, I can feel the truth in it.
And thanks for the
Thank you for that, Anka. That's really beautiful.
Very, very well said.
Very well said. Yeah. And of course, anyone at home, if anything's coming up for you and you have any ideas or thoughts you want to share, feel free to message us. You can, of course, also email us at podcast@.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was coming up for me around authenticity and like stories that we tell ourselves. Before I got in recovery, I got HIV and I was kind of a poster child talking about having an HIV story. And once I was kind of that young, teenager who got HIV, as I got to be 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and I'm like running the AIDS organization, I was still that 19-year-old kid in everybody's minds, and all the stories and everything that I was talking about was still that time at like being 19 or whatever. And I think it can be really easy for there's been often times where I found myself caught in old stories, in some ways resting on my laurels and my experience of the past, because I'm often get stuck in surroundings or environments that kind of keep me from growing. And they kind of keep inspiring me or causing me or asking me to stay the way that I am in order to or the way that I was in order to kind of like stay there. And I think that can happen a lot in recovery. For sure.
Yeah, I agree. I what's coming up for me is I'm thinking about how language can only ever really like estimate what we're experiencing or feeling. that came up for me when we were like talking about things like vulnerability and trust, which are very abstract terms. I can no more like identify what my experience with God is than I can identify love, right, or define love. And so there's something. I think there's even something in the experience of how like terminate language is, and so far away from an experience that almost describes or characterizes what vulnerability feels like. To be less abstract, I guess what I'm trying to say is like we are essentially talking about something that we can only point at and describe, but they're only estimates, right? It's like this much bigger experience. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, in response to what Billy was saying, is I do think that something happens when people are in pursuit of some type of excellence. Either they're going on a really long bike ride, or they're meeting some like Olympic feat or academic or personal. There's something that happens, I think, to people that when they're pursuing excellence, people start to sound the same.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's because, personally, I think it's because we are nearing truth with a capital T, and we're nearing like a par greater than ourselves that is also resonant. I thought Brandon was saying something. No, nothing.
Maybe what it is that we're moving in the same direction. The story is the same. Sometimes the language is different. How you have all these different self-help books, you have recovery or whatever, and it's the same idea. It's just maybe how some people word it. Like I always say, I like to make it look really flowery. I love language. I love language, and when you can find a way to make it beautiful, sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it needs to be messy, and to make it clear, because it'll go over my head. But it's like if you can take it and make it beautiful. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just gonna shut up.
Yeah,
I have a nice little story around this that happened recently. So the country club was asked to submit a programming grant application to a foundation. And part of this process, a lot of times a grant application is just that, an application. I write a story and I submit it, usually with our financials, and then some committee at a foundation looks over it and approves it or denies it. And we get a lot of denials. It's there's a lot of sad moments. But this one is different. They had the committee. There were 24 organizations that were asked to apply. And then from that, there was a selection committee that narrowed it down to 12, I think. And then you had to come and pitch live in front of their board.
Wow.
And the board was set up in this U shape, and you couldn't use PowerPoint and you couldn't use notes. So you had to rehearse it. And I was up against these really, what I would consider fancy organizations. And I had to kind of like come up with a pitch, and you had 15 minutes and to give them the presentation. And then they had 10 minutes to ask you questions. And I rehearsed it pretty well. I thought I had a pretty good, our program pitch made it to the selection committee. So I got invited to present. And then on the day that I was there to present, it was all the organizations are sitting out in the hallway. And so you're all kind of like, it felt like a debate tournament from high school, because I was in high school debate. That's what it felt like. Like you're all waiting in the hallway, waiting to present or give your speech, and it was very intimidating. And I got in there, and the board is set in this horseshoe, and you can like walk into the horseshoe and present. And I pulled an audible, and I didn't go with the original speech that I had prepared. In the middle, I had my phone sitting up because they told us we could not go over time, that we would be penalized if we did. So I had my phone set up, and from sobriety, if you've been here a minute, you've shared your story, so you know what 3 minutes feels like, kind of, right?
Yeah, some people don't know what 3 minutes.
Some people
don't.
Some folks clearly do not know what 3 minutes sound like. or what a buzzer sounds like. But I was watching the time, and I decided in the moment that it felt more authentic for me to share part of my actual story. And so I told him about being arrested, and I told him about a suicide attempt, and I told him about the power of community spaces, and I told them the power of redemption and second chances, and I kind of wove that into the pitch, and I could see two people at the very end of the table, at the very end of the horseshoe. I could see two people, they connected. They gave me visual cues with their eyes that they saw, they heard me. And I knew that I had a couple more. I had won over a couple more by being absolutely authentic in the moment, even though I felt like they were going to judge me. It was I rolled the dice, right? And the actual story, right? Standing in my truth in the most authentic way possible and the most vulnerable way possible, because these were like, I was asking for money. Are they going to give it to an ex-felon? And it worked. And I've never felt more, I think it was the best professional moment I had ever had, because I was owning all of me, right? I was owning the part of me that does this job, and I was owning the part of me that got here. And I walked out of that room, and I was not 100% sure that we were going to get the grant, but I felt like I had never been more powerful because I was standing in all that was Billy.
That's so beautiful. It reminds me of there are groups in the Middle East that conduct this dance as a way of worship. And what happens during the dance is that, the person enters into this kind of trance-like state. And at the point where they feel like God has become present, they start yelling, God, God, Allah, Allah, Allah. And I think something similar happens when someone shows up so full and so connected to a power that's greater than themselves that people can't help but be drawn in, and that's what it sounds like happened. That's so beautiful. I'm mindful of time. We have about 8 minutes. Joshua writes, the value would have been the same and a story worth telling, even if you didn't get the grant. I agree, Joshua.
Yeah.
I agree.
But it's great that you got the grant. Huh?
Yeah. And that's a nice way to land a plane. That's a nice way to land a plane. It would have been a very different ending otherwise. So, with the couple minutes that we have left before we start telling folks how to contact us, I just want to open up the floor for any kind of closing thoughts. Bonnie, Violet, we haven't heard from you in the last few minutes. I just want to make sure.
Haven't heard much from me. I think the only thing that we kind of said, but I would just like to reiterate, is that vulnerability is thought to be like weakness. And, I think growing up, even like in church and stuff, we hear about how weakness is strength. Like weakness is our biggest strength. And I think vulnerability is a big part of that. And I think because vulnerability begets more vulnerability, it's like what was just me and my challenge and my struggle, once I'm able to share that with somebody else, then they're able to meet up with me, and then that person gets to help me with that. And that's how I gain strength and more power in vulnerability in order to really kind of move through a lot of those really difficult or challenging or maybe even exciting things that go on in life. And I think that, it's just, I don't know, that's just something that I wanted to kind of say.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. My last thought is that this is a kind of a combination of things that I've heard throughout the years, but at the kind of heart of all hatred is the belief that we are somehow different, right? And if you can think about any kind of bridge that's been rebuilt or any kind of amends that's gone well, it's been because you've been able to, at least in my experience, been able to see your humanity and vice versa. Oh, wow, so full. So switching gears, how can folks get a hold of us, or you in particular?
Well, you can always reach me on the gram at LouisLou86. I'm there smiling. Yeah.
And you can get a hold of me at A Queer Chaplain on all of the things, as well as my website at aqueerchaplain.org.
Very nice. How about you, Billy?
You cannot get a hold of me, actually.
It's true. I text you. I get left on red.
You can just email info@castrocountryclub.org.
You're not gonna do that.
You can reach me at, of course, podcast at castrocountryclub.org, or you can find me on Instagram at alucasccc. I have 2 pictures on there. Y'all know the story, but if you message me, I'll
Absolutely.
reply.
And I'll dive into this reading, and then we'll. So, the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober gathering place for all people and a home for the queer recovery community, located in the heart of the Castro district of San Francisco. And we endeavor to be a space where all can seek wisdom, serenity, courage, and joy. And you can find more information at castrocountryclub.org. Check out our new website. It's lovely.
And join us each Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here at the CCC on Facebook and YouTube. Next week, we'll be talking about Pride.
Pride.
Yeah. And of course, if you want to hear more episodes like this, let us know. If you have any ideas about things you'd like to hear, let us know. And as usual, we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, and if you're into pipes,
Yes.
with the
Here
big
we
pipe,
fucking go.
please make sure our speak pipe, you can leave us a voicemail message and we'll play it over. If you want to comment, tell us what we can be doing differently, what you'd like to hear us talk about. www.speakpipe.com. Before the end of the year, we're going to get somebody to leave us a message.
Yeah. Even if you're like heavy breathing into the phone, that's fine.
hot.
We'll play it.
I don't think we've had one since Maybelline, huh? That was like our first episode.
I know, and
I
because
miss-
people are terrified
I miss
because
Maybelline.
Maybelline left a message, and then we had her on the show the following day.
All right. We love you.
Yes.
All right.
See ya.
Next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, Billy.
Thank you.